Living in America, and we are talking affordable housing. All right, welcome home. Welcome home to my affordable housing community. Yes, I'm looking like an Eskimo today. I was sitting outside, the weather has changed, and it was raining. So I was sitting out there, well, it was sprinkling. All right, so now it's just started to come down a little bit. So I was okay sitting outside in the rain. And I'm also supposed to be camping out there tonight. But that's a whole nother story, child. That's a whole nother story. What we're here to talk about today, as promised, a subscriber request, who I promised to get on here before the end of the weekend, okay? And she asked me to look to see what's in affordable housing for the state of Alabama. So this is all about the state of Alabama, guys. We will talk about public housing, we will talk about project-based housing, we will talk about housing choice vouchers, okay? So this is going to be a really detailed list, and it's what's available as of today, and I do not know what today is. What is today? Today is September the 14th, 2024, guys. It is September the 14th. And so the only thing that I ask you guys to do, what I always say, is to support this channel. And the way to do that is to press the like button. So hopefully by pressing the like button, this message can get shared to other people. We hope the YouTube algorithm will be good and share this to other people, those in need and want affordable housing such as yourself, okay? And share the video, all right? So if this is a state that you know someone in or willing to move to that state, share that video to those people. Our homeless, our veterans, our seniors, our military, believe it or not, military families, disabled people, everyone is looking for affordable housing these days, all right? And so hopefully this can help. The other thing I always say is to do your due diligence. So if you hear something that's available and it sounds good to you, make sure you check out the surroundings. Make sure you check out the units, okay? To make sure that it's suitable for you and your family. That's all. And also you can buy me a cup of coffee. If you just want to give me a little tip, I'll have that in the description as well. But otherwise, just share the video. Share the video, like the video, okay? All right, so we will get started because it looks like we might have a lot to cover. So we'll see. All right, so open waiting list in Cullman, Alabama. All right, they have a Section 8 housing choice voucher, guys. All right, so you want to contact Cullman Housing Authority. All right, it says it's a 10-mile radius from the central office located at 408 Cleveland Avenue, Southwest Cullman, Alabama. All right, because this is such a detailed list, I will not be able to go in there and see what the requirements are. So you have to do that part for yourself, okay, guys? I don't want to make this video really, really long. I just want to give you the information. You guys take it and you run with it, okay? All right, so what else is open is Samuel P. Crawford, Jameson Village, Howell Senior, Kinsey Cove, and Crimson Ridge. Project-based vouchers. Open until further notice, guys, at Dothan, Alabama. In Dothan, Alabama. All right? So moving on. And I take it that's the names of the buildings, the properties that are available. All right, open until further notice, and this is for an open preference for the employed, the displaced, the disabled, the seniors, and the veterans, guys. And Phoenix City, Alabama, it's public housing available. It doesn't state where, so you want to contact the Housing Authority of Phoenix City, and that is PHENIX. All right. Also open until further notice, project-based vouchers and Jess Lanier Manor Apartments, and this is for 55 and up at Bessemer, Alabama, in Bessemer. All right. That's Bessemer. Also, Arab Housing Authority there in Alabama has an open waiting list until further notice for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, guys. It's game changing. It's game changing when we see housing choice vouchers with open waiting lists, okay? A lot of times they're closed down for a long time and we have to take other things. Sometimes it's public housing or project-based housings until we can get called for Section 8 voucher. So Arab Housing Authority open until further notice. I look funny in my pajamas. I already have my pajamas on. Like I said, I'm camping out tonight. So I'm just looking at myself. I'm like, okay, you have your pajamas on. All right. Selma Housing Authority, low rent. Public housing open until further notice, guys. And Huntsville Housing Authority has public housing available, open until further notice. Big, absolutely big. All right, Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher. Auburn, Alabama. Doesn't say where, it just says Auburn. So I take it that's the county and the city. All right, stretch that. I take that back. That's closed. Not Auburn. Not Auburn, guys. Not Auburn. All right. Project-based voucher in Auburn. All right. Auburn has 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms open until further notice. Not housing choice. Project-based voucher. All right, project-based vouchers in Roanoke, Alabama. The waiting list is open until further notice. They have a preference for the locals there, the homeless, and the employed. Project-based voucher open until further notice, 1 bedrooms in Dale County, Alabama. All right, public housing in Decatur, Alabama, open until further notice. And East Acres and Stirs Home 2 and 3 bedroom. All right. I think I need to turn on some more lights or get my glasses. All right, public housing open until further notice in Decatur, Alabama as well, at Jordan Neal and Summer Maynard for 1 bedrooms. All right. Okay, so Montgomery Housing Authority has public housing open until further notice at Autauga, that's Autauga, Elmore, and Montgomery County, Alabama. Their preferences is for the employed, the disabled, and the seniors. All right, project-based vouchers, waiting list open until further notice. 2 bedrooms in Alabama. That's all it says. Really? I'm gonna have to come back to that one, figure out what that is. All right, public housing open until further notice in Coleman Housing Authority. So we know we said project-based vouchers already. They also have public housing available. Public housing available open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the town of Fort Deposit. Guys, open until further notice, public housing at the Housing Authority of Greene County, Alabama. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Daleville, guys. Public housing open until further notice, the Housing Authority of the City of Dadeville. So Daleville and Dadeville. All right. That's a lot on the tongue. Dadeville and Daleville. But you guys in Alabama know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, public housing open until further notice. The Housing Authority of the City of Livingston. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of Alexander City, guys. Public housing open until further notice at Tallahassee Housing Authority. Contact them. And public housing open until further notice at Uniontown Housing Authority, and their preference is for the employed. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Marion. And public housing open until further notice at Greenville Housing Authority. Public housing open until further notice at Tuskegee Housing Authority. Public housing open until further notice at Bay Minette Housing Authority. And public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of Foley, Foley. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Chickasaw. And they have preferences for the locals, seniors, disabled, and employed. That will go on top of the list. That's what preferences mean. They will go on top of the list. All right, public housing open until further notice at the Stevenson Housing Authority. And public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Greensboro. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Brewton. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the Town of New Brockton. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Brent. And their preferences are for the employed, the disabled, the seniors, and the locals. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Brantley. And public housing open until further notice at Ashford Housing Authority. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the Town of Hobson City. And public housing open until further notice at Andalusia Housing Authority. Public housing open until further notice at Sampson Housing Authority. They are looking for seniors, the disabled, and the employed. Public housing open until further notice at Walker County Housing Authority. And public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the Town of Bluentsville, Alabama. Okay, public housing at the Housing Authority of the Town of Ashland. These are big, guys. This can keep people off the street. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City of Fayette. And public housing open until further notice at Gordo Housing Authority. Wait, let me let my dryer stop here. And public housing open until further notice at Jacksonville Housing Authority. Public housing open until further notice at Linesville Housing Authority. Public housing open until further notice at OPP Housing Authority. And public housing open until further notice at Enterprise Housing Authority. Public housing at York Housing Authority open until further notice. and public housing at the Housing Authority of the City of Sulligent, AL, AI. Open until further notice. And this is for the employed, the disabled, the displaced, the seniors, and the locals, guys. Public housing open until further notice at the Housing Authority of the City. Housing Authority, City of Linden. Public housing open until further notice at Albertville Housing Authority. And public housing open until further notice at Housing Authority of the City of Headland, AI. Well, I guess it's it's supposed to be AL, not I. Alabama. So for the employed, the disabled, the homeless, the seniors, and the locals. Public housing open until further notice at Childersburg Housing Authority. Public housing at Washington County Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Abbeville, Abbeville Housing Authority, open until further notice. I'm not for sure why some of them have AI and some don't. We know it's Alabama. All right, so public housing at Scottsboro Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Hartsford Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing open until further notice at Cottonwood Housing Authority. And public housing at Talladega Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Elba Housing Authority, open until further notice. And public housing at Raglan Housing Authority, open until further notice. This is a lot, guys. This is a lot for Alabama. Public housing open until further notice at Dumopolis Housing Authority. And they are looking for the employed, the disabled, the seniors, and the locals. Public housing at Piedmont Housing Authority, open until further notice for the disabled and the seniors. Guys, share this with the disabled and the seniors, please. Public Housing Authority, open until further notice at Pell City Housing Authority. And public housing, Millport Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at the Housing Authority of the City of Hartselle, open until further notice. All this housing, guys. Public housing open until further notice at Laverne Housing Authority. And public housing at Vincent Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Phil Campbell Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Arab Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Georgiana Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing is available, open waiting list for Housing Authority of the City of Heflin until further notice. Public housing at Aliceville Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Hackleburg Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Collinsville Housing Authority, open until further notice, guys. Public housing at Crossville Housing Authority, open until further notice. Get your names on this list. Get you some housing. Public housing at Crossville Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Tuscaloosa Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Boaz Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Boston Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Ozark Housing Authority open until further notice. And public housing at GUIN, if it's Gwen Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Wanonta Housing Authority, open until further notice. And public housing at Winfield Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Sylacauga Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at the Housing Authority of the City of Tuscumbia, open until further notice. Public housing at Opelika Housing Authority, open until further notice. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your city wrong, guys. Public housing at Lanett Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Carbon Hill Housing Authority, open until further notice. And public housing at Reform Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Union Springs Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Florence Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Jasper Housing Authority, open until further notice. And public housing at the Housing Authority of the City of Fort Payne, open until further notice. Public housing at Guntersville Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Hamilton Housing Authority, open until further notice. They are open, guys. Public housing Authority of Cordova. Public housing at Haleyville Housing Authority. Public housing at Red Bay Housing Authority. Public housing at the Housing Authority of the City of Visalia. All open until further notice. Section 8, Housing Choice Voucher, guys. Greenville Housing Authority for the displaced, the disabled, the homeless, and the seniors. And it is open until further notice. No closing date right now. Big. Section 8 vouchers for the locals and Albertsville Housing Authority, open until further notice. Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher for the disabled and the seniors at Elba Housing Authority, open until further notice. Section 8 voucher, Linesville Housing Authority, guys, open until further notice. Section 8 vouchers for the displaced, seems like the displaced only, for York Housing Authority, open until further notice. Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher at Eufaula Housing Authority, open until further notice. Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher for the displaced, the disabled, the seniors, the veterans, and the locals, open at Walker County Housing Authority until further notice. Section 8 vouchers for the locals at no, I take that back, that's close. All right, Section 8 vouchers at Guntersville Housing Authority, open until further notice. And Section 8 vouchers at Hamilton Housing Authority, open until further notice. Public housing at Anniston Housing Authority for the employed, the displaced, the disabled, and the seniors, open until further notice. And project-based vouchers at Lafayette, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms for the displaced, the disabled, the homeless, and the locals, open until further notice. Guys, I didn't know what I was in for with this one today, but I hope this will help someone. So share it, please, with your friends and families. And if you know anything that will be helpful, please leave it in the comments for your YouTube family. If you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber so we can get these updates. All right, we'll get them together and I'll put them out there weekly. So I want you to stay alerted. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye. Enjoy your Saturday.